When Shaquille O'Neal arrived at the service entrance of the Hotel Monteleone on a Saturday evening in April, the gala had already been running for 40 minutes. He was wearing dark pants, a plain black jacket with no lapel pin, and a pair of white sneakers that were clean but made no argument for themselves. He was carrying nothing. No invitation card, no credential lanyard, no publicist clearing a path 12 steps ahead. He arrived the way he always arrived at things he had built himself, quietly, from the back, without announcement. 4 championships, 15 all-star appearances, a net worth of over $400 million. The most recognizable human being to have ever played organized basketball at any level, on any continent, in the history of the sport. He told the woman at the service entrance he was expected. She had a clipboard and a headset, and the energy of someone managing 17 things at once. She looked at the clipboard. She looked at him. She looked at the clipboard again. "Your name isn't on the guest list," she said. He told her he wasn't a guest. She tilted her head with the specific expression of someone who has been spoken to in a way that does not match the category they have assigned to the situation. "If you're with talent, I need to see your confirmation email." He told her he didn't have a confirmation email. "Sir, I've confirmed 42 celebrity appearances for tonight, and every single one came with documentation." She paused. She looked at him one more time, with the assessing efficiency of a person who has made this calculation 800 times and trusts the result. Then she said it, flat, final, without any apparent awareness that it was being recorded in the memory of every person within earshot. "You're not famous enough to walk in here without credentials." 2 catering staff behind her went very still. A parking valet 3 feet to her left stopped moving entirely. Shaquille O'Neal looked at the woman with the clipboard for one long, unhurried moment. He said nothing. He turned. He walked back to the parking lot and stood beside his car in the April evening and looked at the lights of the French Quarter from a distance. But before the clipboard came out, before any of it was decided, Shaq had noticed 4 things between the parking structure and the service entrance door. He filed them away the way he had always filed things away, in rooms that had not yet decided whether he belonged, quietly, precisely, without reaction. The first was the signage, a banner suspended from the ceiling of the entrance hall, the Broussard Light Foundation Annual Gala, New Orleans. Below the name, a small logo, a stylized flame above a musical staff. He saw it. Something moved behind his eyes and settled there. He kept walking. The second was a program on the side table near the entrance, the kind set out for guests who have arrived at the wrong door. He picked it up. He turned to the middle. A photograph, no larger than a playing card. A girl, 14 years old, in a school uniform, smiling with the specific deliberateness of someone who smiles on purpose. The name beneath it, Destiny Broussard, first annual scholarship recipient. He read the name twice. He closed the program. He put it back exactly where he had found it. The third was a volunteer moving down the corridor with a tray, a woman in her 50s, moving quickly. On her lapel, a pin. Small, brass, a trumpet. Not the kind worn as decoration, the kind worn as identity. The kind that belongs to a specific city and a specific tradition and a specific understanding of what music is actually for. The fourth was through the ballroom doors, which swung open for 3 seconds as a server passed through. Through the gap, above the stage, a projected image. From his angle, at that distance, he could not yet see the face clearly. He didn't need to. He already knew whose face it was. Now here is the part that nobody standing at that service entrance understood on that Saturday evening in April. Not the woman with the clipboard. Not the catering staff. Not the valet. Not a single person in the light of that corridor knew what Shaquille O'Neal had been carrying for 22 years. Not what had brought him to this specific city on this specific night. Not what he had been quietly funding and quietly building and quietly refusing to put his own name on for more than 2 decades. Here is the secret. It began not with a business decision or a tax strategy or a celebrity's charitable obligation. It began on a summer evening in New Orleans in 2002, with a man who had no reason to be kind and was kind anyway, and a meal that cost $6, and a conversation that lasted 4 hours, and a name Shaq has not spoken aloud in a public room in 22 years. That man's daughter is inside the ballroom right now. She doesn't know who built this room for her. And Shaq doesn't yet know she's in it. Stay with us for the full video. Because when those two things find each other in that ballroom in about 20 minutes, it is going to change what you believe is possible when one quiet act of kindness is honored with enough patience and enough time. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972, in Newark, New Jersey. And he grew up learning something that cities teach you before you can read, that the room you're allowed into determines, in large part, what you are allowed to become. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, was small in height and the opposite of small in everything that mattered. She raised him with the iron consistency of a woman who understood that the world would ask more of her son than it asked of most, and had made the quiet decision, without theatrics, to prepare him for it. She made rules. She enforced them. She required excellence not because she believed it would protect him from everything. She knew it wouldn't, but because she believed it would protect him from being wrong about himself. The man who raised him was Philip Harrison, Army Sergeant, precise, present, uncompromising. Philip Harrison believed in 2 things: showing up and finishing what you started. He communicated this the way people communicate what they feel deeply, which is without much elaboration and without ever saying it once and moving on. Shaq moved. Bases, cities, schools, the constant recalibration of a boy who is always new to a room and has learned that the room will not adjust itself. He was 6 feet tall at 13. Recruited before he had finished growing, he moved through San Antonio and Baton Rouge, and then into the NBA and into Orlando and into championships, and into a face that requires no introduction on any populated continent on Earth. He arrived in New Orleans for a summer training camp in 2002. He was 29 years old. He was in the middle of a difficult year, not on the court, but in the way that some years are difficult that no scoreboard registers. He was carrying something the world has no category for, and he was not sleeping well, and on one evening he walked into the 9th Ward and sat at the counter of a small music venue that served food, because the owner believed that music and food were the same kind of offering. The man behind the counter was Calvin Broussard. He was 35 years old. He played trumpet. He had the hands of a man who has been playing an instrument since childhood, and the patience of a man who has learned that the music only gives you back what you bring to it honestly. He made Shaq a plate of red beans and rice and set it in front of him without asking anything in return. He sat down on the other side of the counter when the service slowed. They talked for 4 hours about things that have no scoreboard and no statistics and no Hall of Fame. Shaq ate. He talked. He slept well that night for the first time in several months. He never forgot it. Calvin Broussard died in 2007. A car accident on the bridge. He left behind a daughter named Destiny, who was 5 years old. He left behind a trumpet. a name in the Ninth Ward that people still spoke about in the present tense years after he was gone, and the memory of a man who understood that feeding someone is a way of saying they matter before you've asked them to prove it. Shaq established the Broussard Light Foundation in 2008. He funded it directly. He refused to attach his own name to it publicly, because the name on the door was already the right name, and the purpose of a foundation named after a man is to extend the work that man did, not to replace it with someone else's story. The foundation's mission: literacy and educational access for children in the Ninth Ward and surrounding New Orleans neighborhoods. Its first scholarship, $22,000 annually, renewable through graduation, had been established this year. The recipient's name was Destiny Broussard. He had not known, until 3 weeks ago, that she was Calvin's daughter. Cassandra Pruitt was born in Baton Rouge in 1983 and had built her career in events management through 16 years of the specific combination of organizational precision and interpersonal authority that the industry rewards. She had planned galas, product launches, political fundraisers, and charitable benefits across Louisiana and Mississippi. She did not make credential errors. She had been hired 8 weeks ago to manage this gala and had delivered a 214-item operational checklist, a confirmed talent list of 42 names, and a floor plan revised 4 times to accommodate a last-minute stage change. She was good at her job. She was also, on this particular evening, running on 4 hours of sleep and the specific anxiety of someone who has planned an event to the millimeter and knows that the millimeter is also the distance between a successful evening and a catastrophic one. The foundation's internal records had not been fully transferred to her when she came on board. She had the guest list, the vendor contracts, the timeline, the media schedule. She did not have the complete file on the founding donor. She had been told the host would arrive without the standard green room protocol, told this by a junior coordinator who had written it on a post-it note and attached it to the wrong folder. She had been managing a lighting malfunction in the main ballroom for 11 minutes when the man in the plain black jacket appeared at her service entrance. She cross-referenced the name against the confirmed list. She did not find it. She made the calculation she had been trained to make, quickly, with confidence, on insufficient information. She said what she said. In the 2 seconds after it left her mouth, she understood from the quality of the surrounding silence that she had made an error. She did not yet know the size of it. Inside the Hotel Monteleone's grand ballroom, the gala had reached the point in the evening when the room has warmed enough that people have stopped performing and started being themselves, which is when the most important conversations happen and the things that matter get said out loud. There were 5 people who mattered most in what was about to occur. The first was Destiny Broussard, 14 years old, in a white dress and navy cardigan, and the small brass trumpet pin she wore to every formal occasion because her grandmother had told her it had been her father's, and that wearing it meant he was somewhere in the room. She sat at the foundation's honored guest table with the composed attention of a child who has had to grow up quickly and has decided to be excellent at it. She was watching the room with the specific focus of someone trying to memorize a night they know they will want to remember precisely. The second was Marcus Webb, 67, retired New Orleans school principal and the foundation's board chairman for 14 years. He was the only person in the building, besides the attorneys, who knew the founding donor's full identity. He had texted Shaq 3 times in the past 20 minutes and received no response. This was unusual. He set down his drink. The third was Helen Terode, 71, retired 3rd-grade teacher from the Ninth Ward, Destiny's reading mentor for 4 years. The woman who had written the nomination letter that resulted in the scholarship. She sat beside Destiny with her hands folded, and the expression of a woman who has spent 4 decades watching children become larger than the circumstances they started in, and has never stopped finding it worth witnessing. The fourth was Cassandra Pruitt, back inside the ballroom corridor, moving through her checklist with the low-grade discomfort of someone who has said something they cannot unsay and has not yet been told the full magnitude of what they said. She had, in the previous 90 minutes, waved 2 reality television personalities through the main entrance with warmth the catering staff noticed. She had personally escorted a former NFL quarterback to the VIP holding area and brought him sparkling water before he asked. She had confirmed a morning show anchor's +1 with a smile that was completely genuine. The man she had told was not famous enough was standing in the parking lot next to his car. Marcus Webb checked his phone one more time. He excused himself from the table. He walked quickly toward the service corridor with the purposeful quiet of a man who has been solving problems created by other people's carelessness for 67 years and has gotten very efficient at it. Marcus found Shaq in the parking lot, standing beside the car, looking at the French Quarter lights with the patience of a person who stopped requiring things to go correctly a long time ago and simply waits for them to be fixed. Marcus looked at him, looked at the service entrance. "Cassandra," he said. Not a question. Shaq said nothing, which was its own answer. Marcus went back inside. The conversation with Cassandra Pruitt in the service corridor lasted 45 seconds. The color that arrived in her face during those 45 seconds moved through 3 distinct stages, each representing a different depth of understanding of what she had done and to whom she had done it. When Shaq walked back through the service entrance 2 minutes later, the corridor was quiet in the way corridors go quiet when the people in them have just been informed that they are standing closer to history than they realized. The ballroom doors were open. From inside, a jazz trio was playing something slow and built from the bones of this city. The kind of music that carries a place's memory in its tempo without needing to announce it. A 19-year-old bartender near the service corridor said the name to himself first. Then, because the human impulse toward sharing is stronger than the impulse toward restraint, he said it to the person beside him. It moved through the room the way things move through rooms, when the information is both surprising and completely, immediately believable. Not a ripple, but a wave, front to back, corner to corner, until 400 people had turned in the same direction. But before you hear what happened next, before you understand what Shaq did the moment he crossed that threshold, and what he saw from across the room, and what it meant when he saw it, hold this moment for just a few seconds more. Feel the weight of 22 years of a foundation built on a debt of gratitude that the man it was named for never lived to know existed. Feel what it means to walk into a room you built and not be recognized as the person who built it. Nobody in that ballroom was going to be the same after the next 4 minutes. The room did what rooms do when something arrives that reconfigures the space. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The jazz trio, unaware, kept playing. Cassandra Pruitt stood 12 feet from the service entrance, holding her clipboard at her side. She did not raise it. She did not speak first. Shaq looked at her for one moment, not with anger, not with the compressed performance of someone managing anger, but with the expression of a person who has been exactly where they expected to be and is prepared to continue. "Is she here?" he said. "I'm so sorry I didn't. Is the scholarship recipient here?" "Yes, honored guest table. Center of the room." He walked past her. Marcus fell into step beside him. "You don't need to address any of this tonight." "I can. I'm not here to address anything," Shaq said. "I'm here to meet her." He crossed the ballroom the way he crossed every room, without performance, at a pace that covered distance without appearing to hurry. The crowd between him and the center table reorganized by instinct. People stepped aside without being asked. Not because anyone directed them to. Because rooms do that when someone moves through them with complete clarity of purpose. He reached the honored guest table. Helen Turode looked up at him with the unrattled composure of someone who has seen a great many things and developed no habit of being overwhelmed by them. She folded her hands. She waited. Destiny Broussard looked up. She had her father's smile. Not the warmth that follows from it, though she had that too, but the mechanical fact of it, the specific way a face arranges itself to produce a smile that Calvin Broussard had. The one Shaq had seen across a counter in the 9th Ward on a summer night 22 years ago. A smile that said, "I've already decided you're worth my time before you've said a word." Shaq stood at the edge of the table. He said quietly, "Your father's name was Calvin." Not a question. Destiny looked at him. Something moved in her face, not surprise, more the quality of attention you bring to a sentence that has just named something you carry. "Yes," she said. "Did you know him?" Shaq pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. What he told her took 11 minutes, the summer of 2002. The 9th Ward. The counter. The red beans and rice. The 4 hours. The night he slept well for the first time in months. He told her that her father had done something that night that cannot be categorized as small, even though it took less than an hour and cost less than $10. He told her that the best thing he knew how to do with that was to build something that kept doing what her father did, that looked at people who needed a chance and said yes before they'd earned it. He told her the foundation was named for her father. He told her the scholarship was named for her father. He told her he had recognized her smile from across a room full of 400 people before he knew who she was. Destiny Broussard had been growing up quickly for a long time and had become very good at holding things in public. She held this as long as she could. Helen Turode put one hand on her arm and said nothing, which was exactly the right thing. Marcus Webb stood 3 steps back and found something to look at near the ceiling. Shaq reached into his jacket and placed an envelope on the table. Scholarship renewal. 4 years, already signed. He paused. "Your father made sure I could eat and rest when I needed to. The least I can do is make sure you can study." Destiny looked at the envelope. She looked up at him. "He would have liked you," she said. Shaq looked at her for a long moment. "He already did," he said. That's the whole story. An events director learned that the most important credential in any room belongs to the person who made the room possible, and that a clipboard is not the same thing as understanding. A scholarship recipient learned that her father's greatest gift was not the trumpet or the music or the smile he left behind. It was the meal he made for a stranger on an evening when no one told him he had to. A retired teacher who had spent 4 decades watching children become larger than their circumstances learned that the children we nominate carry more history in them than any form can contain. A board chairman learned that the foundations we build for other people sometimes find their way home in a shape we never planned for. And Shaquille O'Neal sat across from the daughter of a man who had fed him once and looked at her father's face looking back at him, and understood that 22 years is not a long time to honor something like that. It is exactly the right amount of time. She had his smile. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from, and tell us the name of someone who fed you, literally or otherwise, when you needed it, and never asked for anything back. Those people deserve to be named today. If this story moved you the way it moved us, press that like button, not for the algorithm, not for us. For Calvin Broussard, who played trumpet in the 9th Ward and made red beans and rice for a man who needed them, and without ever knowing it, lit a room his daughter walked into 22 years later. Subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that believes the quiet things we do for each other are never wasted, even when we never see what they become. The next story is in your feed right now. We will see you there.